Alright, here we are on Lesson 4, Equivalent Ratios, and we're on page 9 in your yellow notes packet. We're going to skip example 1 for right now. We're going to move down to exercise 1. So exercise 1 says, decide whether or not each of the following pairs of ratios is equivalent. If the ratios are not equivalent, find a ratio that is equivalent to the first one. If the ratios are equivalent, identify the positive number C that could be used to multiply each number of the first ratio by in order to get the numbers for the second ratio. Alright, so if we look at part A here, we have the ratio 6 to 11 and 42 to 88. So we're trying to see if these are equivalent. So first we're going to look here at the first numbers. So we're going to look at the 6 and the 42, and we're going to think to ourselves, 6 times what would give us 42? If we think about it for a second, we know that 6 times 7 is 42. So now we need to check the second numbers. Alright, so we're going to check now the 11 and the 88. And we're looking to see, is 11 times 7 88? And we know that it's not. We know that 11 times 8 is 88. So, since both of these numbers are different, times 7 and times 8, we can say that the ratios are not equivalent because they're not multiplied by the same thing. So, now we need to find an equivalent ratio. So, if we think about it, we're going to keep our 6 and 11. We know that the 42 is a good number. So, now that one thing we need to change would be the second number. Rather than 88, we want it to be 11 times 7, which is 77. So 42 to 77 is an equivalent ratio. Alright, if we look at part B here, we have the ratios 0 to 5 and 0 to 20. And we got to make a little change here because we know that we can't have zeros in our ratios. Zeros are not allowed, so we're going to write a new one here. We're going to look at 4 to 5, and let's see, 16 to 20. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing as we did before. We're going to compare the first numbers. So we're looking at the 4 and the 16. 4 times what gives us 16? That's what you have to ask. And we know that 4 times 4 is 16. So now we need to look at the second numbers in the ratio, so the 5 and the 20. And we're asking us 5 times what gives us 20. And we know that 5 times 4 gives us 20. So since both of these numbers are the same, both times 4, then yes, these are equivalent ratios. So we mark yes here, and the constant is 4. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the next page, so page 10, and we're going to look at exercise 2. And this says, in a bag of mixed walnuts and cashews, so underline walnuts and cashews, that's what we're looking at, the ratio of number of walnuts to number of cashews is 5 to 6. It says, use a tape diagram to determine the amount of walnuts that are in the bag if there are 54 cashews. Okay, so first we're going to draw a tape diagram like we've been doing. So on the side we're comparing walnuts and cashews. Alright, and we said that the ratio here is 5 to 6. So walnuts gets 5 boxes. Let's go ahead and draw that in. And then cashews will get 6, so one more off the end. Okay, and then we have to look back and see what else they told us. So it said that there are 54 cashews. So that means all of the cashew boxes, if you circle all of them, equal 54. So now we know that there are 6 boxes there. So we're going to do 54 divided by 6. And if you have to do it off to the side or think about it for a second, 54 divided by 6 is 9. So that means each box represents 9. So go ahead and fill all those in. Alright, so now it's asking us to determine the amount of walnuts. So now we have to go back and we have to answer the question. So we know here that there are 5 boxes, and there's 9 in each box, so we're going to do 5 times 9, which is 45. So then to answer the question, we can say there are 45 walnuts. Alright, so kind of similar to what we've been doing. The next question is kind of new. So now it says use multiplication to show how the new ratio you created of number of walnuts to number of cashews is equivalent to 5 to 6. Alright, so the first part that's important here is to first write down the ratio they gave us, which we know from up above is 5 to 6. So now we have to show how the new ratio we have is equivalent to the first one. So if we look back up above, we need to write down our new ratio that we found. So walnuts, we found there's 45 walnuts, so that's our first number. And then our second number is cashews, which is 54. Alright, and if it helps to write down, remember what the order is, we're looking at walnuts to cashews. Alright, so now we have to check and see with our multiplication here. So first, we're going to check the first number, which is 5 and 45. And we're checking to see 5 times what is 45. And we know 5 times 9 is 45. So then we need to check our second numbers, which is 6 and 54. And we're asking ourselves 6 times what is 54. And we know that 6 times 9 is 54. So since both of these numbers are the same, that's our C value, like from the first page. So we know that the ratios are equivalent, and this is how you can show it using multiplication. So that's all we had to do. Alright, so that's it for this lesson. We'll go over a few things in class and then practice some more.